The old Red Valley spur line has been dead for 50 years, the tracks swallowed by weeds, the wood ties rotten, yet every local will tell you the final station still receives a train. They call it the Phantom Express, a rust-eaten nightmare that arrives precisely at 3:15 a.m., the time of a catastrophic derailment decades ago. Liam, a seasoned urban explorer specializing in industrial ruins, was drawn by the morbid romance. He trekked 5 miles down the choked, silent railbed until the tracks opened into a clearing dominated by the skeletal remains of a small wooden station house. The air was cold, still, and thick with the metallic scent of damp iron oxide. He set up his camera on the platform, checking his watch. 3:07 a.m. The sound was the first thing to hit him, a low, resonant, almost subsonic hum, a vibration that resonated up through the rusted rails, bypassing his ears and settling deep in his chest cavity. He pressed his ear to the cold steel. The hum was irregular, a tortured whining frequency like a massive trapped engine struggling to turn over. The humming intensified, and the silence that had been so oppressive was violently broken by a rhythmic metallic clack, 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 clack. The unmistakable sound of a train approaching, but warped and agonizingly slow. Liam spun his camera toward the bend in the tracks. The sound was coming from a seemingly impossible distance, yet it was deafeningly loud. He noticed the rails beneath his feet. The rust layer was visibly peeling away in thin, coiling strips, the metal vibrating so violently it was shedding its corrosion like a skin. Then the light appeared. Not a clean, bright headlight, but a diffused, sickly yellow glow, like a lantern burning rancid oil, bobbing erratically as it came around the final bend. The train that emerged was a terrifying spectacle, a massive antique steam engine, black as pitch and utterly covered in a thick, wet layer of rust that seemed to drip a thin metallic residue onto the tracks. It moved with a horrifying, agonizing slowness, the wheels scraping and shrieking against the rails as if locked in a perpetual struggle. The Phantom Express ground to a halt precisely opposite the ruined station house, the shrieking of the brakes a sound of pure, tortured metal. The engine let out a massive cloud of noxious, thick black smoke that smelled intensely of coal and something else, something sharply chemical, like embalming fluid. Every window on the passenger cars was opaque, layered in the same thick, corrosive rust, making it impossible to see inside. The main passenger door, a heavy oak slab, slid open with a dreadful tearing groan. Inside, the carriage was utterly dark, a void of absolute blackness that swallowed the beam of Liam's flashlight. Then, a low, wet sound emerged from the darkness, a sloshing, pulling noise, like someone dragging heavy, waterlogged fabric across a floor. A single dark shape stepped onto the platform. It was a conductor, his uniform a tattered, soaked black rag, and his skin the same color and texture as the engine's wet, dripping rust. He was holding a rusted antique pocket watch, which he held up to the sickly yellow glow of the engine light. The conductor spoke, his voice a low, gravelly rasp that sounded like metal being filed. "Boarding. The final journey requires a passenger. 3:15. He did not move, but the darkness behind him in the train car began to pulse, a faint, rhythmic sucking sound emanating from the black void. Liam, realizing the conductor wasn't an employee but an agent of the train itself, glanced at his watch. 3:14 a.m. The train wasn't a schedule, it was a deadline. He noticed the rusted pocket watch in the conductor's hand. The glass was cracked, and the inner workings were a chaotic tangle of corrosion, but the second hand was ticking, not smoothly, but jumping violently, agonizingly, 1 minute at a time. The conductor's eyes, hidden deep within the shadows of his cap, seemed to focus completely on Liam, and the figure stretched out a rust-encrusted hand, his skeletal fingers twitching. The sucking sound from the carriage intensified, pulling at the air, creating a strong, cold draft that smelled of ozone and damp, forgotten earth. Liam bolted. He ran the only direction he could, down the abandoned tracks, away from the station house, his boots pounding against the rusted, shaking rail bed. The conductor made no sound, gave no chase, but the enormous steam engine let out a final, deafening whistle. Not a clean, mechanical sound, but a tortured, sustained screech that seemed to compress the air, a sound of absolute mechanical rage. Liam ran until he collapsed in the thick undergrowth, shielded from the track. He waited, shaking, until the profound, all-consuming silence returned. When he finally stood up and looked back toward the station, there was no engine, no light, only the empty, rusted tracks and the skeletal station house. He checked his own pocket watch. It had stopped precisely at 3:15 a.m. As he turned to leave, he saw a final, chilling detail. A small, dark shadow of a man, cast by the distant moon, was permanently etched into the rusted steel of the rail, its outline clinging to the metal, slowly being consumed by the damp, corrosive orange of the perpetual rust. The final station had indeed received its passenger. Subscribe to Whisper Dark for more.